My feeling very strongly about Mozart particularly is that so often you read about this in the 80s when there were lots of discussions about what it means to play Mozart. Some people would say, well, it's so wonderful because there's a sense of no interpretation, there's no involvement here, they just let the notes speak for themselves. And I could not disagree with that more. As a basic philosophical standpoint in this music, I think almost every bar requires a strong philosophical positioning, like a positioning about the character, the length of the note, the articulation, the sound, the tempo of one phrase versus another. And when you work on it with people like this, who have that, I think now in their system, because they've heard so many recordings and worked with so many people, you start on this level, on this plateau, and it just gets better from there. The other thing that I really learned is that so much of the beauty and charm and kind of heartbreak of this music lies in the special places between the notes and between the lines and underneath the surface. And there's a kind of very deep pathos and sadness in Mozart's music that is often looked over by people. And I've not yet understood why, because it's all there for the taking, but it requires a huge amount of concentration and detailed music making, and a lot of freedom as well, not in a kind of grotesque libertarian way like maybe you would associate with later 19th century styles, but a very highly calculated, organic, incredibly sculptural sense of time-taking and freedom, and also an unbelievable ear for and appreciation of orchestral colour and instrumental colour, which in Mozart's case is just beyond. I think the piece is a bit tricky on a couple of fronts. It doesn't neatly fit into a genre package or envelope like the other concertos do in quite the same way. I think Mozart has two modes of operation in the piano concertos, in the late piano concertos. Either they have a very overtly virtuosic component that's very vividly on show, like I'm thinking of the C major piano concerto 467, number 21, which is the now this is a super famous piece because the middle movement was in a Vera Madigan, so people know it from that standpoint, but it's also a piece that has a lot of very expressive writing for the orchestra, but the piano is also very much in the spotlight. That's true of this piece, but it's less true, and I think maybe people are frightened by the fact that it's really more of a symphony with piano obbligato. The middle movement is not enough for people to sink into. It has a slightly sort of Haydn-esque feeling about it, in that it's very very tender and very fleeting, but it's not one of these middle movements that you're going to hear on the radio like classic Mozart. So it's a bit tricky on that front as well. If he gets a really good tune in his mind, he sets it 2 or 3 times, once for the solo piano and again for the winds. So that kind of automatically adds a whole extra half a piece, in a sense. And I think Mozart is so clever about this because he knows when he has a really good tune that he must let people hear it as much as possible. So you hear this kind of sophistication of melodic writing, and Mozart doesn't let it go. So you have that, but you also have a kind of massively expanded orchestral introduction in a way that presages Beethoven, but I think for me is inimitably Mozartian in the sense that Mozart packs in so much thematic material. Level to which he goes to the furthest extremes of exploiting the possibility of the wind instruments, not only by themselves, but as a kind of organism of energy, music making as well, which he certainly has before, but it's just brought to new heights here. Mozart is on his way back to Vienna from Salzburg after a lengthy stay there, I gather, and he stops off in Linz, and they want to do a concert. That's logical, and so he writes a symphony super quickly, and he writes about the fact that he has to put it together very quickly. So it's premiered in Linz. We don't know exactly what else he played on that program. The thing about the Linz is we know almost without a shadow of doubt that Mozart probably plays it 3 or 4 more times during his career, once again in Vienna and then probably in Prague again, which is very unusual for a symphony of the time. Probably he plays it in Prague again in 1787. By that time it's quite an old symphony. People loved this piece. There was an arrangement that was made in Prague which was wildly oversubscribed. 74 people subscribed to the arrangement of this piece, which shows you that people wanted to have a way to play it in their living rooms, which means they really liked the piece. I think it's remarkable, as you say, that Mozart he's kind of doing studies for later things. Like he's doing a study for the Jupiter Symphony, and I think this is a kind of Jupiter Symphony with training wheels on, in training. And as much as it's difficult for me, I think I'm just going to stand up and kind of lead the thing from the keyboard, but not playing, possibly in a way that Mozart might have done in the 1780s. We don't really know what he was doing during these symphony performances. Maybe he was really playing continuo. Sometimes maybe he stood up and just did a gesture or tried to show a tempo, not kind of Mahlerian conducting in the modern sense, 19th century sense of the word, but something more gestural.